Hi guys, welcome along to video number 2 in this series. This is following on from the first video, which hopefully you've watched already, which is really talking about all the actual bits of software that I use to complement Flightsim itself, to do your flight planning, to put the weather into the sim and all that sort of stuff. So if you haven't checked that out already, just go back and have a look at that if it might be interesting to you. It just gives you an idea of all the different options and things that I find really essential in making the flight happen and making it as successful and as accurate as possible. As I say, I do a lot of my flying on VATSIM, so a lot of it is geared up towards making sure I've got the real world procedures and weather and stuff like that. But no, I like to do it as accurately as possible anyway, whether I'm online or not. So I always use all the things that I sort of referenced and showed you in the first video, so go back and check that out. If not, then let's move on from there into the actual flight planning itself. Sort of what happens when you've decided, right, I'm going to go flying, what's the next step? So with that in mind, we need to take a look at a couple of websites that help us determine what route we're going to fly, or what airline we're going to fly for, or what the flight number is going to be. Again, I like to make it as real world as possible, so I always try and find the relevant flight numbers and routings and stuff like that. You might have any number of reasons why you choose to fly a particular route or what you're going to fly. You might have just bought the new Airbus and think, right, I want to give that a spin. You might have a local airport. You think, I want to fly from my local airport, so I need a carrier that operates from there. There's a whole host of different reasons. You might have just bought a nice new scenery. You can see here the Virgin Australia 737 on short finals to Queenstown in New Zealand. That's a scenery I particularly like flying, and I fly into it with a few different carriers. So there's a whole host of different reasons, but once you decided for whatever reason you want to fly, you need to find a flight number, a call sign, an aircraft type, so that you can start putting your flight plan together. The first thing I do is just grab a browser and go to this site, UK Flight Aware. There's a couple of useful features on this. First of all, if you're thinking, right, I want to fly from fly a particular route from, say, what's a very common one on VATSIM at the moment, Sydney to Melbourne's very common on a Monday morning. So I want to fly that route, and I want to fly a real world call sign for, whether it be Qantas or Virgin Australia, whoever. So you know the route you want to fly. So we've got live flight tracking on here, and it works in a few different ways. But the feature that I'm going to show you very quickly here is, in this menu, the IFR Route Analyzer. Now, it doesn't, I'll just a caveat on that one, it doesn't work, I found, for European airports. Well, I can't get it to work for European airports, particularly UK airports. I'll show you what I mean very quickly. So we need, in the boxes, the origin and the destination airports, we need the 4-letter identifier for the airport, the ICAO code. Okay, now it's real simple. It sounds like, oh, here we go, something else complicated I've got to learn. Real straightforward. Every airport has a 4-letter code as defined by ICAO, and this is how you find it. Open any search browser will do, Google, Bing, whatever. Type in your airport. So we're going to go from Sydney, so Sydney ICAO. Search that, and you should get one of the very first returns. Is normally Wiki. There we go. That there is what you're looking at, the ICAO code for the airport. It's always a 4-letter ID, and the IATA is a 3-letter ID, but we don't need to worry about that for flight planning. The ICAO code is what you need. So for Sydney, Yankee Sierra Sierra Yankee YSSY. Do the same exercise for Boston, and you should get KBOS. There you go. That is, Wiki is normally the source of stuff for this. Is real quick and real simple. It will come up on several different search returns, but you can guarantee that there'll be something there from Wiki. There normally is, and that is all you need. You just need that 4-letter code for your airport. So we're going to go from Sydney, which we said was Yankee Sierra Sierra Yankee, to Melbourne, which is Yankee Mike Mike Lima. Wiki, there we go. Yankee Mike Mike Lima, there we go. So I always have a pen and paper, or normally a laptop, next to me for jotting down notes, so you can start to compile your plan. So we're going to go from Yankee Sierra Sierra Yankee to Yankee Mike Mike Lima. So I'm just jotting that down on a piece of paper or on your notes on your laptop or whatever, just something next to you, so you've got it to hand, so you can have all the data when you start compiling your flight plan. So that's the route we're going to take. What flight number are we going to use? Well, this is where IFR Route Analyzer comes in. It works really well for Australian routes, for Australian Pacific routes and stuff like that. I think it probably does fairly well for American routes as well. It doesn't work for UK based routes. I'll just show you that. So this is Echo Golf Kilo Kilo, which is Gatwick, to Golf Charlie Tango Sierra, which is Tenerife South. Find a route. Nothing, nada, absolutely nothing there whatsoever. Don't know why. I mean, there might be somebody can fill me in. There might be some data protection that NATS, National Air Traffic Service, have. I don't know. There's certainly, you can find UK-based data on here, and I'll show you in a minute, but it doesn't work on the IFR Route Analyzer, so fine. We're not flying that route today. We're flying Yankee Sierra Sierra Yankee to Melbourne, Yankee Mike Mike Lima. Find routes, and you'll get a list of hundreds, well, several. 413 times this particular route has been flown, so that's probably the most popular one, and so on and so forth. That is the number of times that routing has been filed. And if you really want to see what the routing is doing, actually it's quite cool as well. There's a moving map here that just tells you that's they're all the aircraft currently flying that route. And you can see if we pop the route listing, if you actually click on it, pop it open, it'll open in SkyVector, and you can do some cool stuff. If you want to start getting really into it, you can manipulate the route in here. You can look at the nav log, which gives you the waypoints, top of climb point. This is something that your flight plan would generate for you, but it's been done here in SkyVector. It's totally non-essential, that's just something that's quite interesting. SkyVector is quite a useful little tool as well, but it's non-essential for what we're doing. It's just quite interesting to have a look at. So you popped it in the route analyzer, you've got some returns. What does it all mean? Well, your origin and your destination are fairly obvious, and this is quite good because it'll give you pop-ups on stuff there, tells you what's going on. Obviously not the route, because that is just the route ID for that flight. And that's a full analysis of all the times that those routes at those flight levels and so on have been filed. If we go down, this is where it gets really handy, because here is a list, a very, very comprehensive list of every time that routing has been filed. And if you look here, this is just Thursday. There we go. So that's all the flights that have been filed from 06:49 Eastern Standard Time. I think it's Australian Eastern Standard Time, right up to 18:54, and there'll be more coming later on as the Australian evening progresses. And this is where it gets really cool, because it tells you everything you need to know right here. Ignoring the time, unless you actually want to fly the right route at the very specific right time, which is cool. That's, some people like to go to that sort of length of detail. Firstly, the ident, that will be your call sign. That'll be the flight's call sign. It's comprised of two different things. You've got 3 letters, 3 numbers. That's generally the standard. There's occasionally 4 numbers tacked on there, but almost always the standard is it's split down the middle, 3 and 3. First part is your airline ID, which will be a 3-letter ID for the airline, the carrier. And then the second part will be the individual flight ID. So this, the very top one, QFA 479. QFA we know is Qantas, and we know that because if we hover over the top, it tells you Qantas. So it'll tell you Qantas, the airline, Qantas, the actual spoken call sign in the little quotation marks and little speech marks there, and where they're based. So that is a Qantas 479 from Sydney to Melbourne, and the aircraft type, the B738. What is that? Never heard of one of those before. It's a Boeing 737-800. That is the aircraft type ID. So Boeing 737-800. If you need to find your aircraft type designator, I'll just tab across quickly to this one. This is the ICAO aircraft type designator database, and there is literally everything on here. So we want a Boeing 737-800. There we go. And they are your type designators. You don't necessarily need to do this, because I'll show you in the flight planning stage a quicker way to find your type designators out, but that is there if you've got something you're not sure about, if it's not in the list. That's the ICAO type aircraft type designator database, and I will probably pop a link in the description to that just in case you decide you do want to use it. But if we go back to our route analyzer, we now decide a couple of different things. So are we wanting to fly this route in a particular airline, Qantas or Virgin Australia, Jetstar? They're all going to be carriers that operate that route. Do we want to fly a particular aircraft type? Do we want to fly the Boeing 737? Do we want to fly the Airbus A320? Because then that will determine what call sign and what carrier we're going to fly. So you can see if you want to fly it by aircraft type, if you're adamant you want to fly an A320 on that route, there you go, A320. So that's going to be Jetstar 523. Jetstar 523 on that routing. That's the route they filed. You don't necessarily have to follow that exact route. You can generate one in your flight planning stage, but you can follow the precise exact route if you choose. That's the flight level they cruised at. It's fairly common for that sort of length of flight, up in the 36 to 400s. And yeah, if you then, if you decide you want to fly a 737, you've got options there from Qantas, from Velocity, Virgin Australia. So you can see there, Virgin Australia is the airline. In the quotation marks is Velocity. That's the aircraft, the airline call sign. So that would be Velocity 874. If you're not sure about any of these call signs and you can't find it from here, Wiki is your friend. If we go to, let's say, fairly straight. In fact, let's do an interesting one, which is you might not think is quite as obvious. EasyJet is quite obvious, EZY. Ryanair is quite obvious, RYR. You can find all these out from Wiki. But let's go to if I could spell Norwegian Airlines. Go to their wiki page. There. And on the right hand side over here, I'll just drag this into view because you can't see it. There I can. Now this is definitely wrong, because this is very typical wiki. Norwegian Airlines is not Scandinavian. That's SAS, that's Scandinavian Air System. So that's an interesting wiki. There we go. Try and find a page that actually looks like it's genuine. There we go. So it'll have the carrier flag up there and your call sign stuff. So Norwegian Air International, they've got two lines. They've got the domestic or European line and the international airline, which is doing UK based and Scandinavian based flights to the States. So if you're flying with those, you'd find their ICAO code, their 3-letter ID, which is IBK, totally not related to Norwegian whatsoever, but there's obviously a reason behind that. Might be the Norwegian for Norwegian. And their call sign Nortrans. So that would be how you actually report yourself on the radio. So you'd call yourself Nortrans 456, whatever. So that's a useful use for Wiki for finding things out like that. I'll just show you. EasyJet's wiki page, same sort of results. It's going to be one of these. Yeah, so you got the airline ID up there. Oh, this is EasyJet Europe. So they've just branched out into. They've got possibly Alpine. There we go. The EasyJet standard page. The ICAO, easy. There we go. So you can use Wiki to find this stuff out. We'll just bin that one off because we don't need it, and go back to here. So we've decided, for me, it's going to be a. I'm going to fly as Velocity 874. So I'm going to just jot that down so we've got it handy. Vos 874, and that is our call sign. So we know that we'll be using that if we're going to talk to Flightsim. We're going to be filing it in a flight plan. If you're flying offline, it's not as important with call signs. It's entirely what you want to do. But obviously, if you're flying on Flightsim, it's really important to get the right call sign and the right aircraft ID for your flight plan, just so people know who you are and what you are. So we found our route, and there's a couple. Just look at a couple of others here. So we've got TGG, that'd be Tiger Air, which is the call sign Tigos. What else we got here? TFR, so that'll be freight, is it? Toll freight. And then you can see the aircraft types they're operating. So that's Tiger's A320, is it? Oh no, Tiger's operating a 738. There we go. That's a new one. I thought they operated the Airbus. And then they operate a 737-400. Qantas occasionally operate an A330. There we go, two down there. An A330 on that route. So you've got a few options there. Jetstar operating an A321. Very occasionally, I mean, this is a route that is Jetex as well, Cobham Aviation. BA146, there we go. I've seen one of those for a while. And Singapore operating that route as well for some reason. This is very comprehensive. It's a very well flown route, so there's just quite a lot of things repeated there as you go. It's just scheduled routes fly same time every day. So if you scroll down the list, it just gets repeated day by day. So you just want to look at one day, pick something out of there, whatever suits you. If you can't find anything useful through the IFR route analyzer, we go back to the main page. You can do it a couple of other ways. If you know you want to replicate a flight that leaves London Gatwick at this particular time of the morning, which is 8:10, or 10:08 rather. Can't read and I can't type today, if that's useful. Let's go to Gatwick in the search function here, and we'll go to a live map, and this has got scheduled arrivals. It's got scheduled departures and a further page on the route stuff. So these should have all arrived, and these should all be en route. It does the same function, so it will tell you the airline ID, TSC there. If you hover over it, it'll tell you it's Air Transat, and Transat's the call sign and the aircraft type and where they're coming from. On here it gives you the IATA 3-letter ID for the airport, so if you want to, you can just go and then wiki that or Google it, and it'll tell you what the in actual fact, I don't know if you can't quite see that. Let me just move that over here. It's going to do it on here. There we go. So there's a little pop-up at the bottom there. You may be able to see that. So I'm hovering over, let's say Calgary, which is YYC, is the IATA. And then at the bottom, the address for the live streaming from that airport, which is that little black pop-up just below, actually gives you the full ICAO code, which is Charlie Yankee Yankee Charlie CYYC. So that's useful. I didn't know about that. You learned something new. So you can do it by airport. So all the stuff on the live map that's coloured is arrival and departure traffic. Green's departing, blue is arriving for that particular airport, and all the greyed out stuff is traffic going elsewhere. So that's the Heathrow approach at the moment. That's all the stuff coming across the top of the channel, across the wash, coming either through our airspace or coming down into our airspace. So this is quite a useful one, because if you know your flight is departing at a certain time, but you're not sure what call sign they use. Let's say we wanted to look at departing Gatwick traffic, and we wanted a flight that was going to where's this going? It's Krakow in the Ukraine. So they fly as Easy 8511. That's an A319. And you can see LGWKRK, London Gatwick to Krakow, and I think that's probably the I'm not sure what the coding is that goes with it. I'll have to look into that further, but I never use it for anything like that. That might be airspeed. Yeah, could be airspeed possibly. And now very highly on. Oh, that is altitude. That can't be the airspeed. That's ridiculously fast at 500 feet, 5,000 feet. Anyway, there'll be someone. It could be meters. Could possibly be meters actually. There'll be someone who spends more time on here than I do, that will know what all that is about. But yeah, it's useful. It's quite interesting for just having a look at stuff, to be honest. But if you're looking for for specific information, this is the place to find it. You can find the aircraft call sign type and routing from here, and then you can use that information in your flight planning. So let's have another look at something else. Let's go to Dubai. So we'll work with the ICAO as well. Yeah, it will do. There we go. So this is Dubai at the moment. So you can find so that's Pakistani International. So that'd be Pakistani 204. So let's actually see what their call sign is, just as a matter of interest. It's a Pakistani A320 going to wherever that's going to. Yeah, so their call sign would be Pakistan. We've got Fly Dubai FTB 661. UAE is Emirates, and their call sign is Emirates. It's all there to be found, which is really handy. I'm pretty sure if you click on the actual link to that, it'll show you. Yeah, so it shows you their in-flight map and data and stuff like that. So yeah, you can find a whole host of stuff, past flights from that route, possibly. Yeah, from that route. But yeah, it depends how in depth you want to get. But it's more than enough information there to help you with your flight planning. Okay, so we have decided we're going to fly today from Sydney to Melbourne as Velocity 874. You can see I've got another tab up here, which is Flight Radar 24. Just reload that real quick. It works in much the same way. It's a live map. This is JFK. Use the search function up here. You can go to Gatwick. It's very similar. It'll tell you a little bit less data. It tells you the call sign only, and then if you click on it, it'll bring up a little tab on the left-hand side, which you can't see there. Aircraft type, picture of the actual aircraft if they've got one on database, routing, aircraft registration, all sorts of stuff on there, altitude and stuff. So it's quite interesting, if nothing else, just for seeing what's going on in the world. But you can get the same sort of information from Flight Radar 24 as you can with UK FlightAware. Great, so we've got a routing and a flight number. Now we need to plan it. So let's go to SimBrief. This is my planning of choice, and you will have, if you've seen part 1, you'll have seen how I talked about the different options for planning, PFPX and so on. I choose SimBrief because it's as good as you can get for free. All you need to do is sign up. I don't get any spam or any sort of grief from them. It's really cool. And then you can go ahead and start using it as a flight planner, and it is really accurate. So dispatch is the function you're after. You just click on the dispatch tab, it'll take you to the dispatch page, and you've got a few options. You can create a database of saved flights as you go along, and then you can start creating new flights. So if we go to new, and it gives you a blank sheet. There's a lot of data here, a lot of options. All you need to be concerned with is the flight info and the aircraft type. You don't need to worry about anything else. It will do the rest for you. You can, by all means, start manipulating all these fields. There is no need. All you need, literally all you need to know, is the ICAO ID for your departure airport, for your arrival airport, and it will immediately generate, based on that, it should generate some routing information, give you an alternate, and then you need to know your aircraft type. And if we go down to the list here, this is why you don't necessarily need the ICAO aircraft type designators database, because they are all here. If you know the type you're flying, 737-800, that's the ID there. A 777 freighter, that's the ID just there. So as long as you know your aircraft type, which is going to be a 737-800, and then it'll do the rest for you. So what else do we need to look at here? You can, as I say, I sometimes just make sure I've got a full load of passengers, because it will generate a random load. So occasionally you've got sort of 95 people on board, you've got very light aircraft. I like sometimes like a challenge. If I'm operating on a short strip, I like to put the aircraft nice and heavy and test the performance out. It's entirely up to you. You don't need to do any of this. You can leave it at auto. So we'll just stick it at full, because why not? You can stick a load of cargo in here. I think you could very possibly overload your aircraft. The database is pretty accurate, but I think 21 tons of cargo in a 737, yeah, possibly a bit much. So yeah, you can add sort of 3.6 tons, say, and leave the zero fuel weight at auto. You can set what you want the zero fuel weight of the aircraft to be. I happen to know from doing this that the database for the 737-800 is slightly inaccurate, because you add a full maximum zero fuel weight of 62.7 tons, and PMDG will go, no thank you, that's way too heavy. So I generally leave it at auto, and it'll do it for you. It'll give you routing down here. It'll base it usually on real world weather, and it'll offer you arrivals and departures, but we'll look at those in more detail. We'll ignore them for this stage. The routing is this bit here. Again, it doesn't matter, you don't need to do anything to this, it's just nice to know what's going on. The analyze route function is quite handy. If you click on that, it should come up green. Lovely. It's telling you that your route is valid for AIRAC 1808. Now, what on earth is an AIRAC? That is the navigation database for the aircraft FMC and for flight planning. And what that means is it's a database of all the airways, all the waypoints and the navigational aids, all the departure and arrival procedures, and it is updated monthly. You'll probably find, especially if you installed FSX 5-6 years ago, you're well out of date with your AIRAC cycle. You can totally get away with not having an up-to-date one. I personally, flying on Flightsim especially, I like to have always the most up-to-date one. And you can use your Navigraph subscription to do that. If you watched part 1, you'll know all about Navigraph and the charts and the FMC database manager. I will just bring that up very quickly so you can have a look at what it entails. So we go Navigraph, FMS Data Manager, bring that up here, and that should pop up on top in a sec. There we go. This is a subscription-based piece of software, and it deals with your nav data and your charts. It gives you access to both. You go to the add-on mapping section, scan the drive that everything's installed to, and it will tell you what it finds. You can also point it manually if you need to. And then once you've done all that and you've found stuff, go to your add-on list, and that's what it'll load up in every time. And then it'll tell you what you've got, what it's referenced to. So I've got PMDG for P3D version 4, prepared version 4. Prepared version 4, good God. And then the AIRAC cycle, the current revision. So we're on 1808, that is the current one, it says up here. What that is 18, the year 18, 08, the 8th month, and that's how they do them. So the next one will be 1809, that comes out at the end of August, ready for September, and then when we roll over into January, it'll go to 1901. So that will tell you if you're out of date, and it will usually tell you in the aircraft as well when you load it up. So you can do all this, set yourself up with a Navigraph account, and then update all your data on the PC, on the actual software, on the sim, and you can link your I think it's through my account, you can link your Navigraph subscription to your SimBrief account, and you can unlock the right cycles. You can see I've missed a few there. That ensures that when you're planning, when you're doing your flight planning in SimBrief, it's using the same database as you'll be flying in the aircraft, so everything should be up together. So cool, let's go back to, that's not the last flight plan we generated, we don't want to do that, let's just try going back and see if that does it. That's giving us a blank form again, so just pop that in real quick. So we're going Sydney to Melbourne. That's definitely not what I was after. Sydney to Melbourne. There we go. It's offered me an alternate of Avalon, and then type, and that's all you need to do. That's literally everything. I choose to add a bit down here because I just like to add a bit of extra security to my flight plan, that I'm going to get a full passenger load and a bit of cargo, just to make sure it's reasonably accurate and real world weights. Analyze the route, make sure it's all good, and that's it. You can do a whole host of other stuff with the weather. We can use a route finder to plan a custom route, or to ensure that you fly the same route that your airline, your aircraft that you found on FlightAware. You follow the exact same route. It's up to you. You can get really in depth with that. You don't have to. I just use the generated route. It will often offer you a few different options from what's been filed there as well. There's not many airways in Australia, because you can imagine it's quite a sparse country, so there's not usually a whole host of different options for routing across Australia. So it's pretty much the same route there: Wollongong, Razzie, Lizzie, and then they are your departure and arrival procedures: Cliff 4 and Lizzie 5 Alpha. We'll talk all about those later on, but that's just to say that has offered you a departure from Sydney, your first waypoint, which is Wollongong, which is a VOR, ground-based radio station. Hotel 65, which is an airway, to Razzie, which is an airway intersection. So that is routing from Wollongong to Razzie via Hotel 65 airway. Then from Razzie to Lizzie via Quebec 29 airway, and then from Lizzie, the Lizzie 5 Alpha arrival into Melbourne. And that's offered you a full routing. That's quite a short one. That's a nice short, 1 hour 15, 1 hour 20 minute flight, something like that. Oh, about 1 hour 40, I think, actually. It'll tell you all about that in a second when we go to our flight plan. So we're good. We've got everything we need up to the top. And the dispatch options, you can save that if you want to recall it regularly and fly it on a regular basis. And you can generate the OFP, the Operational Flight Plan. You can put your call sign in here. I do. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. It will do if you're going to file it on Flightsim. What do we say? 874. You don't have to, for your own personal benefit, but it's useful to do. And as I say, if you're going to use one of their handy tools for flying online on Flightsim, then it's very important to put that in there, because you'll need it. So we are good. We wish to overwrite the previously generated flight plan. Yes, and it will generate a briefing package. Just give it a moment while it does that. I'm just going to grab a drink quickly. Okay, so here we have a briefing package. This is summarised here. You can look for any discrepancies. Airline, velocity, Virgin Australia. Flight number 874, your routing, destination, arrival and destination, alternate. It'll automatically generate you a cruise altitude, cruise flight level, and then your date, your departure time. So there we go. Yeah, it's 1 hour 22-minute flight. So your departure time is always given in UTC, and it'll normally be half an hour from when you generate the flight plan. So it gives you half an hour to get into the aircraft, do the planning, and get off blocks. So it is now 10:25 British Summer Time, so that's 9:25 UTC or Zulu. So 9:55 is the scheduled departure time if you go straight to the aircraft. You can obviously change that in the planning stage if you know you're going to be flying later. So that indicates 1 hour 22 airtime and 1 hour 50 block time. So that's brakes off to brakes on. So from pushback to shutting down at the gate at the far end, that includes your taxi time. About 1 hour 22 in the air. You've got a couple of extra bits. Your block fuel, that's the amount of fuel you're going to load onto the aircraft. Block fuel is the total fuel. Extra fuel, we've not, as PIC, as Pilot in Command, we've not elected to take any extra fuel, so we'll stick with the block fuel. And your zero fuel weight. Zero fuel weight there, it's given us 62.7. I can almost guarantee you that that PMDG will reject that, but we'll see what happens. No, we don't want any Windows updates, thank you very much. I'm going to have to succumb and do them eventually because it's not going to leave me alone until I do. And it'll give you your takeoff weight there. All of that can be found in the flight plan, which is below this handy little route map here. So that gives you every waypoint along the way. It should give you, it's given us the Wollongong NDB. There we go. So that'll give you your individual waypoint information, the flight level you're planning to be as you pass that waypoint, the airway that it's on, the time into the flight, and so on and so forth. So that's handy for just scrolling through and checking continuity. And if we go down, this is your flight plan. This can be printed if necessary. This is everything you need to know. It is very, very, very comprehensive, and there's a lot of stuff there that you just don't need to worry about. Let's start from not from the map. Let's start from the top. This is just the data stuff, which is like kind of summary that's same as what's at the top there. Tell you your call sign, tell you your routing, Kingsford Smith International, which is Sydney, to Melbourne International, Yankee Sierra Sierra Yankee to Yankee Mike Mike Lima. This is just a summary of stuff. You don't need necessarily to be concerned too much with what's there. If you scroll down, the two bits of information you're going to need from this when you're entering your flight plan and entering your stuff into the FMC are just below the Pilot in Command's signature line here. So this would be signed off. Your dispatcher would bring the paperwork to the captain, he'd check it all over. Once he's happy with it, he'd sign it off and release the aircraft from dispatch. Immediately underneath that is a thing called FinRes, Final Reserves. That is the amount of fuel you need as a minimum, absolute minimum, to have left when you get to your destination as a reserve for diversion. So that is an actual figure that goes into the FMC. So you need to either remember where that is or note it down. FinRes, your final reserves are basically 2.3 tons of fuel. And then if we go down further to the weights section, this is the rest of what you're going to need. You're going to need your zero fuel weight, which I'm telling you now that for the PMDG 737 is going to be over. So I'll show you what we do. You can go back into the flight planning stage if you want to take some of the weight out, or you can just modify it in the aircraft, because the data on the the operational flight plan should be accurate, but very occasionally, for whatever reason, if you have an offloaded passenger or something like that, it'll be edited at the last minute. So it can be subject to change to what actually gets put into the aircraft by the crew. So we can do that when we actually get into the aircraft, but that will be slightly over. And then your block fuel, 6.8 tons of fuel. and it'll tell you takeoff weight, so 69.3, so we're 0.7 tons under maximum takeoff weight, and 65.7 tons is going to be your landing weight, which is just under your maximum landing weight. So we're good to go. We've not elected to take any extra fuel. The maximum amount of fuel you could take anyway on this trip because of the weight is 0.7 tons. And that's all you need to know. So that is your flight plan. You can print that off if you want. Entirely up to you what you want to do with it. I just leave mine on. I do my planning on a laptop and have it to my left as I'm flying, just so I can glance down and reference it. So, one last thing to do here. Not necessarily as important, although it's just really handy for aircraft like the PMDG with the flight plan uplink feature. Most of them do nowadays. Is this section here? They have a SimBrief downloader tool, which we're going to do that now. So I'm going to click on that, and I want a Windows version. I've never used this before, so I'm going to see how well it works. We're just going to save that, let it download. We've got 35 seconds remaining. What that should do, as it says here, tired of downloading all of your FMS route files separately and manually saving them? SimBrief Downloader program makes it easy to automatically export all of your chosen FMS formats in the proper folders with a single click. Basically, it will take the flight plan data, save it as the correct type for whatever you're flying, be that PMDG, FS Labs, Aerosoft, Airbus, anything that supports the Sim Uplink feature. It'll place it in the correct folder, and then when you go to the aircraft, you don't have to type your flight plan in manually. You can do it from one click. So we're just going to let that install. Should be fairly comprehensive. Run, done, run. Fine. Finish that. SimBrief FMS downloader. Let's see how this works. I would like to use it. Yeah, why not? It can sit in the background. Okay, I'm not going to bother with this now because it requires some logging in and all that business, and I can't be bothered with doing that whilst we're making a video. So it's a useful feature. I'd get that signed up if I were you, and I'll show you the principle of how it works when we get into the aircraft. So we've done that. We've generated our flight plan, which we've got here, and we've got everything we need. So we can go ahead then and load up the actual aircraft and start thinking about doing some flying.